Welcome to another episode of Erik Wait Whiskey Studies, and in this video, going to do a review of a Palo Cortado Sherry and a Palo Cortado Sherry Cask Finish Whiskey. Alright, so this video is part of a series that I'm doing on Sherry and Sherry Cask Finish Whiskeys. So in this video, I'm going to review the Cruz Vieja Palo Cortado and Rama and the Navazos Palazzi Grain Whiskey. This is cask strength, bottled in 2016, aged in Palo Cortado cask. But before I get into this whiskey, we want to learn a little bit about Palo Cortado. The name Palo Cortado translates literally into cut stick in English. Like Fino, Amontillado, and Oloroso, Palo Cortado is made from Palomino grapes grown on Albariza soils in the Sherry Triangle between the cities of Jerez de la Frontera, Sanlúcar de Barrameda, and El Puerto de Santa Maria. Fino cask in the bodega would be marked with a single angled stroke or cut. The cask would be marked with a second stroke or cut across the initial stroke, cortado, once it is evident that the cask has turned into Palo Cortado. Palo Cortado is a very rare variety of sherry, only 1 to 2% of cask, that is initially aged under floor to become a Fino or Amontillado, but inexplicably loses its veil of floor and begins aging oxidatively as an Oloroso. The result is a wine with some of the richness of Oloroso and some of the crispness of an Amontillado. In short, Palo Cortado is like Amontillado on the nose and Oloroso in the mouth. Faustino Gonzalez Cruz Vieja Viña Robo Palo Cortado. The wine underwent natural fermentation in 600-liter American oak butts. It is unfiltered and resting 6 months on the lees. It underwent 1 year of biological aging and then subsequently underwent oxidative aging in American oak butts for an average of 15 years. It's bottled at 18% alcohol by volume and sells for about $43 in a 750 milliliter bottle. Thus far in the series, we have reviewed a Fino and a Manzanilla, which are basically the same thing, Amontillado, Oloroso, and now we're looking at Palo Cortado. Palo Cortado, in terms of the general profile, typically it's almost like halfway between an Amontillado and an Oloroso. Oloroso tends to be a little bit, I would say, darker, a little nuttier, but Amontillado tends to be perhaps a little bit lighter. Palo Cortado seems to be somewhere there in the middle between the two. So Palo Cortado is also one of the most rare types of sherry, only say 2% maybe. It consequently also happens to be one of my favorite types of sherry and one of the most rare in terms of sherry cask finish whiskeys. But it's really worth getting to know, and prices aren't too bad. You know, I would say Finos you can get for under 20 bucks, Olorosos 20 to 30 bucks, Palo Cortados 40 to 70. Some of the higher end can be around 70 bucks, but still very affordable wines. And once you open them, they're not going to go bad, you know, right away. You can have one for several months and they're still really, really good. But for me, a bottle of this won't last very long. All right, check out the color. Sort of a light tan. It's somewhat opaque. It has some clarity to it, but you can't see through it. On the nose, it's like figs, but figs that haven't fully dried out. So it's almost like a fig compote. There actually is a very sort of acidic orange note, but it's more like a desiccated orange or a dried orange note. The classic saltiness there of sherry is there. So it doesn't have, say, the marzipan notes of Fino or Manzanilla. It doesn't have the black walnut character of Oloroso. But there is some slight nuttiness there. It might be more like a pistachio. There's some nice, I would say almost like a cooked vanilla note, and almost like a lighter caramel note. There is sort of a, it's hard to describe, rancio character to it, almost slightly acrid, basically like fig dates and raisins that are drying out, but they haven't completely dried out. They still have some plumpness to it and some sweetness to it. On the palate, Fino and Manzanilla, you get the nuttiness on the back end. Get more of a dried fruit, dried apples and pears, up front, and then get more marzipan and so forth in the middle and nuttiness in the back. But you can also get some fresher character on the front of a Fino. Amontillado is like a halfway between a Fino and an Oloroso. Oloroso, fully oxidative, so you get more of the dark, dried black fruit notes and a lot more of that nuttiness character, I mean, right up front. This has some, I would say, desiccated, dried black fruit notes up front. It has just a tinge of sweetness up front, and then it immediately goes dry. I do get a little bit of nuttiness and saltiness on the back end. But I'm gonna say, I've had Palo Cortado before. This is not like other Palo Cortados. I like this. It's okay. It's good. But I would say there are other Palo Cortados out there. So if I was gonna go buy another Palo Cortado, I would probably see if I can get one from Lastau or Gonzalez Bias. I really actually wasn't familiar with this producer, so I was just sort of taking a shot on it. So if you're gonna look for a Palo Cortado, my recommendation is Lastau and Gonzalez Bias, I think, are two of the most reputable producers, widely available. So this is good, but it's not probably one of my favorite Palo Cortados I've ever had. It hasn't wowed me. Palo Cortado, I like it so much, it typically has the wow factor. This is just kind of good. All right, so more important than this wine is, how does this wine character of Palo Cortado affect the profile of a whiskey? The Navazos Palazzi Palo Cortado single barrel cask strength grain whiskey. Made with Penedès corn that is distilled at a Jim Beam distillery in Spain, it is then aged in 225-liter Palo Cortado barrels from Valdespino Sherry House for 4 to 6 years. It's a limited release of 300 bottles in 2015. It's bottled at 53.5% alcohol by volume or 107 proof, and sells for anywhere between $75 and $110. Other Palo Cortado cask whiskeys include the Arran 12-year-old Master Distilling Palo Cortado finished cask strength Isle of Arran single malt Scotch whiskey, the Danston 21-year-old 1997 Palo Cortado cask Highland single malt Scotch whiskey, the Dewar's Double aged 27 years Palo Cortado sherry cask finish, the Dunaville's 18-year-old Palo Cortado cask strength Irish whiskey, the Glengoyne cask finished Palo Cortado vintage in 1999, Isla Mist 8-year-old Palo Cortado blended Scotch whiskey, and the Penderyn ex Palo Cortado sherry cask single malt whiskey. Now, I'm going to tell you straight up that this is an absolutely fantastic whiskey. I've got it down about right here on the label, but it's not the easiest to find. Actually, the biggest challenge is, it's not that it's not easy to find, it's hard to find someone who has it who will actually send it to you. So there's only about 600 bottles or so I think were made from 3 casks, but they do different vintages, so year after year after year. So if you can find it, you might not be getting the same year. It might not be exactly the same cask strength, but I've had a couple of bottles of these before, and I think they're real consistent in terms of the quality and consistency of flavor. Now, this is an absolutely superb whiskey, challenging to get because if you find someone who does sell it, to get them to send it to you. But if you have one and you splunk down, say $90 to $120 or whatever, you will not be disappointed. One of the things I think this whiskey does really, really well is do justice to the spirit and to the cask. Basically, it's a corn whiskey, you know, almost completely corn with a little bit of malt. Of course, you always need a little bit of malt for the enzyme to do the conversion into starch into sugar. But I think it is really well balanced and integrated with the Palo Cortado sherry cask. It harmonizes really, really well, and the corn whiskey plays a really good base, a really good palate, a really good background for the Palo Cortado. And it has a lot of punch and power and strength and flavor and aromas. Now, visually, it has sort of a golden color to it on the nose. I do get that sort of sweet corn character there, but it's sort of in the background. I get a lot of vanilla from the cask. Get a little bit of spiciness there, but the Palo Cortado then really, really, really shows up. Now, what I'm looking for in the whiskey is A whiskey that doesn't seem like, well, they took some whiskey and then poured some sherry into it. Don't want that. A whiskey that doesn't seem like, you know, the spirit or whatever else, or some other type of cask is just so overwhelming. The sherry cask that you can't tell it's actual sherry. What I want is the flavors and aromas to really harmonize really well, to be a really nice balance. And this whiskey has it. The whiskey also has a lot of, I would say, both sweet and savory notes. I like that sort of contrast between sweet and savory. You know, sometimes you're in the mood for sweet upon sweet upon sweet, something a little bit more of a dessert style whiskey. But I like something that has them both. On the palate. It is hugely sweet up front, which you can expect from a corn whiskey. Savory kicks in about 3/4 of the way back with a little bit of saltiness. What really makes this whiskey, I would say, seductive is its texture. Super creamy, super velvety, almost oily, and that's a really nice viscosity. At 53.5% alcohol by volume, you might think it had a lot of bite, that it'll have a lot of grip, that it might be a little bit overwhelming, but it's not, and that's what really makes it dangerous. So I'm getting almost quite a little bit of bourbon-esque, but not quite. Doesn't have the charred character of a bourbon, but you get the intense vanilla, that corn character there. Nice spice, cinnamon, nutmeg, baking spices. 3/4 of the way back, I think the sherry really makes its presence known. I would say subtle notes of dried black fruit notes, a little bit of saltiness there. So fig, dates, raisins, lighter caramels, and it has a real nice long finish. Another thing about this whiskey is it does really well on ice. At 53.5% alcohol by volume, it can take the ice and not lose any flavor. In fact, in some ways, it actually becomes intensified because the ice maybe is reducing a little bit of some of the corn notes, but it's intensifying the cask notes. It is definitely turning up the volume on the cask. So, to sort of scale back on the corn notes and up the cask notes of the Palo Cortado, just cool it down. Put a couple ice cubes. Really delicious. Now, I've gone through, actually, even though it's a rare, hard to find whiskey, I've actually gone through 2 of these before, and this time around, I also ordered 2. So if you can find it, my highly recommendation is don't buy just one. You're gonna wanna buy more than one. Now, what I'm gonna give in terms of a score, I'm gonna go solid. I'm gonna go 94 points. 94 points. This has the potential to be definitely within my top 10 for 2021. An absolutely superb whiskey. And for in terms of studying sherry and sherry cask finished whiskeys, I can't imagine anything being better in terms of displaying and doing justice to both the base spirit and the whiskey. Absolutely fantastic. All right, if you like watching my videos but you've not yet subscribed, and actually subscribe, ring the bell to be notified when I go live or post a new video. And if you're one of my Patreons, I want to thank you very much for supporting this work. All right, until next time, Slanjiva. Hey, don't forget to subscribe and check out these other whiskey videos.